Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Zetas video with my recommendations for Zetas to play in the early mid game is how I'm going to put it. Early mid game, late early game, and it's a matter of debate what like early game, mid game, late game what is, but I'm kind of sticking towards the beginning of my farming guide. Characters that you have already once you've applied all the Zetas I talked about in my other video with best early Zetas. I'm also going to talk about some to avoid, and a lot of them I'm going to talk about to avoid are extremely obvious. I just think things are worth stating sometimes that are obvious, and new players might not realize how bad these are. This is not one of them. This is the Tuscan Chieftain Zeta, which I wish I had, but I'm still working on. So Zetas are always a problem. It's a very important resource that's worth conserving and being super smart with. First, I'm going to be talking about Jedi Knight Anakin. Jedi Knight Anakin is a great early player, early game character. A lot of people are going to get him really early. He can be one of your 5 even to unlock Yoda. But the reason his Zeta is a little bit later in the early game or early in the mid game is because it's specifically for a Padme squad. It says this: if Padme is an ally, she takes a bonus turn after each of Anakin's bonus turns. Padme had some of the Zetas I recommended in my first video, but I think those are definitely priority over this. But without it, Anakin's just getting his bonus turn, and if all allies are Galactic Republic, he does 100% more damage. This is great even without a Zeta, but when you have Padme on the team, you're really going to get going with just an extra turn in addition to his bonus turns, so 2 for the price of 1. Keeping thematically with the Padme team, we have one that could apply even outside of a Padme team. But it's Ahsoka Tano's, OG Ahsoka. If the ally leader is Galactic Republic, Ahsoka is called to assist whenever another Galactic Republic ally uses a special ability. This is amazing. It is like a constant dispel on your target enemy, even before you unlock Padme, so you could use this. You could use any kind of lead. You can use Jedi Knight Anakin, you could use Mace Windu. I mean, not like a generic Jedi like Bastila, but this is crazy good. She puts out decent damage, and if you give her enough offense on her mods, it's really going to stack up. But the main benefit is that dispel that happens constantly on her basic. Even Foresight. If they have Foresight, it can't be evaded. If you're an experienced player watching this, you might have guessed where I was going next. General Kenobi is the next great Zeta you can get to bolster your Padme team, or any Galactic Republic team for that matter. And you might debate whether this is late early game or early mid game. And with the new raid system, there's a lot of problems with it. I'm not going to get into that now, but one effect of it is you're going to be able to farm these raid characters very fast if you choose. So you can get General Kenobi actually very early. And his Zeta adds, if all allies are Galactic Republic, he's going to taunt whenever another Galactic Republic ally loses any protection up. So under Padme, you constantly have protection up. That means basically anytime anyone gets hit, he's going to be taunting. His ability is great even without the Zeta. He's constantly giving out critical hit immunity if you get crit. And he's getting Foresight on himself, so it makes him even harder to kill. So he's an amazing character, and this Zeta is a priority as soon as you get him with a Padme team. Now next is Mace Windu, and Mace Windu has a lot of Zetas, but the one I'd recommend first is actually his special, which is kind of unusual because uniques and leaderships usually have better Zetas. But what it does is if the target enemy had Shatter Point, which pops up and you can target no matter who it is, he can swap turn meter with a Galactic Republic ally. And if they're a Jedi, the one you're swapping with, he's gonna taunt basically 2 stacks of Brazilian defense. So it's up to you whether you want to give a Mace Zeta. I'm not going to say hardcore, like definitely do this, because it stacks well with his other Zetas, and he kind of needs all the Zetas to reach his full potential, which is pretty expensive, and I wouldn't recommend it super early. But he's a great character, available super early, and that could really help bolster either a Padme squad or just a generic Jedi squad. Next up, we're talking about Mace's arch enemy in that old cartoon movie, at least. But we're looking at General Grievous, and I think at this point in the game, what I'm thinking about, you're not going to have a full-fledged Grievous team ready to go, but I'm going to recommend getting Metalloid Monstrosity Zeta, because whenever a droid Separatist ally is defeated, he's going to dispel all his debuffs and take a bonus turn. And you might not be able to beat teams like this, but this is actually a very solid team to set on defense. If you put some droids with just bare survivability or Separatist allies, he's going to get a bunch of turns and he's going to steal a bunch of banners, which early on can make the difference in a Grand Arena match. Next up, another Galactic Republic character. We got 5s here, and this is going to be one of the quintessential Zetas for a Galactic Republic clones team, and that is Tactical Awareness. If it's under Shock T or even anyone else, whenever another 5-1st ally would be defeated, 5s takes the fall and gives them all his max health and max protection, speed, and offense, which makes their whole team just bonkers, just crazy stats. So that's definitely the one to prioritize. He does have another one, which is good. It's a lot of turn meter. I would apply that after Tactical Awareness for sure. It's kind of a luxury Zeta. I think it really is a great support. It's probably better than the other 5-1st Zetas, but definitely get Tactical Awareness first. Now we're moving on from the Clone Wars era and talking about a Rebel, Han Solo. Rebel Scoundrel and Smuggler. He's got a lot of hats. And just like General Kenobi, you can get him relatively early now with the new raid setup if that's all you're focusing on with your Tier 1 raid currency. Again, I don't want to comment too much on the raid reward structure right now. It's a really hot topic, and there's a lot to say. But Han Zeta, I've heard a lot of people discussing it. Like in old videos, I'd listen to them. They're like, "Oh, it's one of the best Zetas ever," and it's really good. But they misstate what it actually does. He shoots first. Even without the Zeta, he takes a bonus turn and shoots at the start of the encounter, Zeta or not. But what the Zeta does, it adds some critical chance, 10%, and then whenever he attacks with his basic, he attacks again with 50% less damage. So it's basically plus 50% damage with a chance to like reduce extra turn meter. It's a great attack. And if you got them below 50% turn meter with the first shot, then the second shot it's going to do 75% more damage. So the second shot might be just almost as strong as the first shot. It's really going to help him pack quite a punch. At this point in the game, I'm not sure what you'd unlock first, Han Solo or CLS. But CLS has 3 great Zetas. I think the first one that usually gets recommended is It Binds All Things, his unique. He doesn't have to be the lead, but usually you're going to want him to be the lead in his team. When he resists a detrimental effect, he recovers protection 5%, and whenever he inflicts a debuff, he gets 10% turn meter, and other allies gain half that amount. The leadership is similar, and that's another one I'd recommend early too. Whenever an enemy resists a detrimental effect, allies gain 5% turn meter. So the more detrimental effects, debuffs we call them now, you try to inflict and they resist, you're going to get the turn meter train going. His third Zeta is good. I wouldn't recommend it super fast, or maybe I would. It's plus 50% crit avoidance, 100% tenacity, so it is super strong. That's all about him. Really, all the Zetas are good, but I'd recommend in order. It Binds All Things, and then one of these other two. It's kind of up for debate. Sorry if that's not super helpful. And last of the Zetas I'm going to be recommending today, it's mostly about Galactic Republic teams and then the CLS team. It's going to be Loyal Friend. Chewbacca has 2 Zetas, and at this point in the game, I'd hope you'd unlock Chewbacca and get the full team going with CLS, Han, and Chewie, or the core of 3 at least. This Zeta is super helpful. He already gets guard, so he's going to protect Han and another character already without the Zeta. What the Zeta does is whenever Chewie deals damage, allows to recover 3% health, 3% protection. That might not seem like a lot, and that's really why I want to talk about it, because it seems like nothing at first until you realize he's assisting all the time. He deals extra damage. Where is it? He deals like an extra little percent damage. Yeah, 20%. He deals bonus damage equal to 20% of the max health of the enemy. So even on a basic, that's 2 instances of damage. As an AoE, and if you're hitting 5 enemies, then that's 10 instances of damage. So that's 30% health and 30% protection right there. And combined with how often he assists, that is a ton of health and protection recovery throughout battle. His second unique, I wouldn't recommend super fast. He's immune to ability block and cooldown increase, which is nice, but his main benefits aren't through his specials really. I mean, it's nice to dispel, and he can get a stun here. But really just the assisting is all the damage he's doing and the healing, so ability block and cooldown increase isn't an enormous problem for him. And now we're moving on to the Zetas you probably want to avoid. Old Ben I want to talk about because you need him early on. He could help you unlock Yoda. He's necessary for Commander Luke, but his Zetas are not worthwhile. The first one is unique. It's actually his better one. It's decent, and I do have it. Eventually, you want to get it if you have a ton of surplus. But only adds some turn meter gain, then some health and protection recovery. First time he's defeated. But you're already in a bad spot if that's happening. Ideally, you don't want him to die at all. This is like too little, too late Zeta. It's like kind of taking up, I don't know, a squirt gun on a wildfire, maybe. And his special Zeta is just awful. Just don't do it. When his taunt expires, he gets another taunt. Taunt again for 1 turn. Which is, if he has buff immunity, it's not even, or shock, it's not going to do anything anyway. So that one's really just crap. I kind of wish I didn't even have it. Next up is another character with 2 Zeta to avoid it. Unlike old Ben, I don't have either of them. I've still gotten this far in the game and still don't have either of them. The first is his leadership. You don't want to be using his leadership anyway. You can make use of him early in a Palpatine team, but it only gives a little bit extra speed. And you inflict expose on enemies that fall below 100% health, which is not super impactful since protection is so important in the game. Maybe once upon a time when protection totals were very low, that was better. And also Callous Conviction. You gain 20% for each debuffed enemy. It's hard to scroll down on it. But it's not very good. Just don't worry about it, don't do it. Don't give Tarkin any Zetas ever. And another character that you use to unlock Commander Luke early on, and maybe you'd be tempted to give him a Zeta if you can early to try to get through that event. Don't do it. Whenever Han takes damage, he recovers 5% protection. It's not a bad Zeta overall. I still clearly haven't prioritized it to get it. And you can have some niche uses for it, but it's really endgame where that's going to matter when you have a ton of your roster filled out. Just don't waste it on him. And continuing on the same trend, we got Princess Leia. This is one I'd never recommend applying. I'd never recommend her Omicron either. She just gets an extra 45% chance to heal, and whenever she attacks, she recovers 5% protection. I mean, that's okay, but she only recovers 5% health. This is just abysmal, or 5% health and protection. This is just abysmal. It's never worth it. Just never do it. Okay, this one, Farm Boy Luke, seriously, there was one guy that maxed as Farm Boy Luke that I saw in a roster review, and I was just shocked. It was horrible. I mean, it's clearly a meme, but his Zetas are so bad. His leadership, never useful. You get an extra whopping 5% tenacity, and then when you actually resist something, you get just advantage for 2 turns. Like, advantage, such an underwhelming buff. It only just gets you 1 crit hit. And then at the start of his turns, he gains 10% damage until crit damage until the stack of the encounter, or the end of the encounter. I mean, this doesn't say there's any caps, so theoretically, if you could like make him take infinite turns, you get infinite crit damage, which is kind of funny to think about. But just never waste Zetas on Farm Boy Luke, no matter how hard of a time you're having unlocking Commander Luke. I know we already talked about bounty hunters in general, but I just want to encourage you not to get Jango Fett's lead Zeta yet. It is a strong Zeta, but it is not an early priority, and you're not going to have several bounty hunter teams to split up. Even if you do, just don't put it on him. He's a great character. You want him early on, just don't give him that lead Zeta. His Notorious Representation Zeta is kind of useful. I don't know when I'd recommend getting this. It's not super early priority, but he prevents revives, which is more of a late game problem. But yeah, just at least delay Jango Fett's, even though he's an awesome character. Next one you want to avoid is Boba Fett Zeta. It's not really super impactful. He's a great early game character, so you might be tempted to give it to him. It just gives him 100% protection recovery on a finishing blow, which is nice when you get it, but it's not really that impactful as a Zeta. He's great without it. And he just does so many things. Even his leadership doesn't have a Zeta. And it's a pretty good catch-all generic leadership. So awesome character, just don't worry about the Zeta. Next, moving back to the Old Republic era, we got Mission. And the Jedi Revan event is very easy. You don't need to worry about any Zetas on Mission. Even by the time you get to Malak, I don't recommend using Mission for it. The Karth team, Karth lead with Mission and Zalbar is the main features. Is a bad team and not worth it. And they don't even have Canderous anymore because he goes with Mandalorians. But the Zeta, it's just she assists whenever Zalbar attacks once per turn or uses an ability, which in theory would be nice, but it'd just be if she was a better character on a better team. And the last one I'm talking about, thematically appropriate with the alphabet, Zalbar, Z. Big Z as they call him. His Zeta, you know, not really worth it. He has his like unique is great without it. He's like, or no, his other unique Wookiee toughness, getting 20% damage from any time he gets hit, or 20% defense anytime he gets hit. That's kind of crazy. So he's a kind of good generic tank, but you don't need a Zeta. Even if you're going to use him late game and you have enough relics to give him, it's just about him in mission. They recover 10% protection for each dot on enemies, damage over time, which again is for a Karth team, and Karth teams are garbage. So that's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. Most of the ones we talked about that are good are the Galactic Republic Zetas, and then also the CLS team Zeta. So make sure you tune up those two teams because they're going to be good for a very long time. Even if you were on like Jedi Master Kenobi, a lot of those still have good play, except maybe like even Padme Leadership. I still get you set up at the very end game. So a lot of good stuff that's worthwhile, and it is valuable to you even early mid game. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you guys later.